Let's do it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Roger. With me today is Alex, and I'm the product manager, and Alex is the engineering manager of the database team. And today we are looking at our 16.8 planning and kickoff. One thing to note is that 16.8 is a shorter milestone for GitLab. It is the end of the year. There's a number of PTOs from different team members, so we're expecting to be operating at reduced capacity. However, by and large, a lot of the work that we're doing spans multiple milestones. So we're continuing onwards with a lot of very similar themes. In general, we continue to work on things that affect the availability and reliability of GitLab.com and for self-managed. So we'll just jump into taking a look at some of the top priorities and where we're currently standing. So first up,
Another note
sorry.
about the reduced capacity. Typically over the holidays, we have a soft production change lock, which is not to say we don't make production changes. But we do make fewer and less frequent production releases. So that also impacts the ability to deliver things over the holidays. And we do that in part because there are fewer people on the delivery team to do the to coordinate production releases. So uh yeah,
Yeah,
just
thanks, Alex.
throwing
That's
that out
a
there
cool
too.
reminder that I didn't actually think about either. So I think that definitely is a further important thing to call out for capacity and velocity purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so top priorities. I think frequent viewers of this video will realize a lot of these things continue to recur. Lightweight lock contention has been something we've been working on for much of the past quarter. I think we've made some pretty good progress so far. I think our high level goal here in terms of mitigation was to basically start dropping a lot of unused indexes and then looking for ways to mitigate other forms of lightweight lock contention. Alex, did you want to give us a quick overview of where we are so far?
Yeah, so we've managed the three tables. Our primary method of reducing lightweight lock contention was by dropping indexes on high traffic tables. So the three tables we targeted were namespaces, projects, and users. And between the three of them, we've managed to drop 25 indexes, which is great because our OKR goal was actually 20. So we've already accomplished that. Hooray! We've still got a couple more that we're looking at trying to drop. A few of them we dropped only for GitLab.com, but given the scale it took for us to encounter this, we don't expect our customers to encounter the same kind of contention issues that we've had. Um, our next work stream for this is we have a spike to investigate vertical table splitting. So the advantage of vertical table splitting is if we come up and establish some patterns for doing it, similarly to what we've done with partitioning, we can potentially give teams access to these patterns in order for them to do vertical table splits, but we think that that'll also be applicable to the table size reduction effort as well as the wall rate reduction. Because hypothetically, if you take a set of huge columns out of a table and you could easily move them to a partition table, which would give you table size reduction, which would be nice. And also, if you move columns out that have fewer updates, that will help with wall rate because you won't be sending the entire row. You'd just be sending the row like the updated columns, ideally. So
Yeah, so
anyway,
super
this
exciting.
PhD is we've put it in the lightweight lock contention category, but we're hopeful that we can use this strategy in a variety of different ways.
Yeah. And I think that's really key to what we're doing here, just thinking about foundational capabilities and tools that we have to enable improved database performance across the board. Um, cool. And then next up is our table size reduction effort. This is kind of a long-term effort, not specific to any one table, but making sure none of our tables get too large. This is also a very collaborative effort for the database team because ultimately we don't own any particular tables here, but we work with other teams that know their domains best to sort of either break up some of these larger tables or find other strategies to reduce their sizes. I know two of these items called out here, both CI partitioning and merge request diff tables, are also associated with their own OKRs shared across multiple teams. Alex, what are you thinking about these ones?
Yeah, so the big news on this effort comes from the CI partitioning effort. It's that, and that is that we've started writing to the new partition for all new pipelines on GitLab.com. This is huge. It means for CI builds and CI builds metadata, the two tables that have partitions on them, we've effectively frozen their sizes. So we start to get to take advantage of all the work that the teams have been doing over the last, gosh, almost a year now that we've been working on partitioning that table. And so they're writing, and so it's, I say new pipelines. So what happens is if you have jobs that are retried in an existing pipeline, those end up in the old partition. But for any new pipelines, their pipeline IDs have a partition associated with them, and that partition cascades through all of the other options. And so for CI builds and CI builds metadata, it's actually using that to determine that it's going onto a new partition, which is huge. It's alleviates one of our biggest concerns about CI builds, which was if we didn't do something soon, we're on our way towards Postgres maximum relation size, which was a little terrifying to be on that way. But so we expect this will help improve performance for some of our pipeline things already in the short term, and our customers may start seeing benefits from this too once it's rolled out permanently for them. So it's at the moment the new partition is behind a feature flag, and so it's limited to GitLab.com. I don't know that that's going to go out in this release, but hopefully as soon as next milestone, we may see customers being able to write to new partitions too, which would be really great.
Yeah. And this is really great too, because I remember one of the discussions we were worried about in advocating for increased staffing on this effort was, the amount of time we collectively as a company had invested into the groundwork and not necessarily, feeling like we were able to meaningfully say we have capped and limited some of these concerning factors yet. And this is like really just a clear demonstration of the value we've invested in sustained over many, many months.
Well, and that team saw a huge infusion of talent in this last milestone. They had a couple of folks who I think were back from parental leave, and they also got a couple other folks involved. And from our side, we actually changed our DRI with them to two people so that we could help them more effectively. So Matt is the primary, but then we also have Leo working with them as well. So we're trying really hard to accelerate that effort in any way we can, because it's going to be really important for us to be able to do that stuff effectively.
Awesome.
On
That's
the partition merge request diff side, our part of that is mainly done. So we've provided helpers for the create team, and Diogo is working with them to help them start it. I believe they're starting a background migration this milestone with this current milestone that will start backfilling data into the partition table. So that would be really good.
cool. Well, both of these are definitely super exciting things that we will talk more about in our December PI update review later on this month. So then this one is more of a newer item, a new limiting factor for us that we've started investigating and exploring. And Alex, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier about vertical table splits being a potential solution for this as well. Do you want to just give us a quick view of what are some of the challenges that we're now coming up against that we're going to resolve?
Yeah, so we have a few different approaches that we've discussed to reduce our wall rate and help. Uh, there are two problems, right? So we want to reduce the wall rate overall, but we also want to provide tools to make sure that if overall wall rate is up, we're not removing replicas just because that one happens to be the furthest. We want to make sure that if all of the replicas are 30 seconds behind, we don't want to remove the one that's 31 seconds behind, right? And so part of that is adding feature flags to the load balancer, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later too, because that's we've lumped that partially into the wall rate reduction and partially into some overall load balancer improvements we're working on. The main focus for this milestone has been analyzing our current wall logs and trying to understand which parts of the application are generating the most wall. So we'll continue analyzing that as well as we go forward and see if there are places where we can either introduce vertical table splits to reduce the amount of data that's being written, or check if there are other ways that we can just reduce that overall rate.
Yeah, and I think this general theme of sort of understanding how different parts of our application perform differently is really important as well, because so far, a lot of our efforts and monitoring has been sort of looking at the database in aggregate as a whole. And I think as we look for more fine-grained opportunities for improvement, having visibility into how different parts or different functionalities impact performance will allow us to make more targeted and strategic investments as time goes by.
Yeah, I foresee so for error tracking, we've used feature categories, right? And we try to have feature category included wherever possible in order to for the error tracker to have be able to associate those errors with specific parts of the application. And I think I foresee us looking at that pattern for database queries sometime in the future to try and understand which parts of the application are generating the most load. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we'd like to try and figure that out at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, so those are our major items, and we expect that to take up most of our capacity. We do have some secondary items here that we kind of work on when we have some spare cycles. Migrations, making sure they run in milestone order, has been something that's been ongoing for a little while now. And then we've introduced a new one under load balancer improvements. Why don't we start at the top here and where we
Yeah.
are?
So this effort is making sure that we run with that for customers who are upgrading multiple versions at a time. They run their migrations in the same order that we run our migrations, which is to say by milestone, right? And this will help them be consistent not only with how we run migration, more consistent with how we run migrations on GitLab.com, but for how also our zero downtime customers upgrade as well. So this is very close. We haven't quite gotten the update written into the issue yet, but I've touched base with John about that, and we should have it written in soon. But the specs that he was working on for the final testing, he overcame the last blocker and expects to be able to get that stuff merged hopefully this week. So we're hoping that we'll be able to actually get the first implementation of new ordering out early on in 16.8.
Cool. And so when this goes out, I think for our self-managed customers who are looking to upgrade, what we expect to see at the end of the day is just overall increased stability and reliability and predictability, which I think will help with a lot of the support tickets that we've been getting with upgrades.
Well, and the other thing it'll provide for our customers is it'll provide them with a guaranteed compatible version, right? So in the past, because we didn't enforce milestone boundaries between migrations, you could end up with migrations that were depended on that had earlier timestamps but depended on later code. And in those circumstances, if you were upgrading multiple versions, you could end up in a state where you ran a really like what was actually a new migration with an old timestamp before you would run some newer stuff, which didn't necessarily cause problems by itself. But in the event that another migration might fail, you could end up in a state where you had some migrations from 16.8 and some migrations from 16.5 and some migrations from 16.7, but like maybe not all of them, right? And this, because we're doing them one milestone at a time now, it'll mean that you'll be in a zone where you'll still be compatible with a version of the code. So you won't you'll be able to downgrade to that version potentially, which is a functionality customers have asked for a long time, is the ability to downgrade. And this isn't full downgrade, but it at least will hopefully put people back in a functional state.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. And then last up, we have load balancer improvements, which is a new item for us here. It's something we've been thinking about for quite some time, but it's also been a while before we felt we had capacity on the team to tackle an additional new item. I know there's a bunch of different improvements we want to do as part of this theme. Alex, do you want to at least touch on some of the technical pieces here?
Yeah, so the two big ones that we're looking at right, well, the first big one we're looking at right now is the addition of feature flags that are load balancer compatible. So because our feature flagging system within GitLab depends on the database, feature flags have historically not been something we could use in the load balancer because the database connection goes through the load balancer. So what we've done is I think I don't know if it's merged quite yet, but it's very close. If it hasn't, we're introducing feature flags that we'll be able to use within the load balancer that bypass the load balancer and talk directly to the primary. And the advantage of this is we'll be able to do changes within the code, so long as they don't impact things like uh, active connections or anything like that. We can make changes to the code and deploy them using our regular feature flag strategy rather than depending on things like environment variables, which take a lot longer to deploy and manage because they have to be set by an SRE, and then we have to bounce all the servers. And it's the feature flag work will make that a lot. It'll make it a lot easier for us to make load balancer improvements. So once we've done that, the other thing we're looking at is changing our load balancer to be zone aware. So uh, adding zone aware database routing, we think will we know it'll reduce the amount of network time and also cost by picking replicas that are in the same zone first. So if it looks through its list of replicas, it'll look at the list of ones in the same zone and say, okay, are these caught up? And if they are, it'll pick one of those before it drops to a tier two, so to speak, where it could pick from other zones. And part of that is going to turn into cost savings. So we spend a lot of money on cross-zone traffic for the network, right, for the database traffic right now. And so this could be a good cost saver, but also it should improve performance because we won't have as much network time in our database connection.
Yeah. So this is definitely an exciting item. There's multiple dimensions of benefit, cost, efficiency, the ability to safely iterate more rapidly. I think all of these are things that we look forward to as a team. And I think it'll be nice because not only do we have immediate direct benefits to GitLab, it also helps us fulfill our mandate more efficiently moving forward. So lots of cool things here. I think similar to some of our other investments, this is going to be an item that will overall probably take several milestones to see end to end. But we're happy that we're able to get started on some of these items. So I think that's where
Well,
we are for today. Do you have anything else you wanted to jump in and talk about, Alex?
I was just going to add that the other place we're using the feature flagging is in the wall improvements so that we can temporarily disable if we needed to removing replicas from the pool. So in a case where we saw increased traffic, we could in the past we've seen Sev1 incidents happen where a single replica was removed and that turned into a domino effect because once all of them were rising with this pressure, traffic was directed to fewer and fewer replicas at a time. So even though they're all a little bit behind, being able to make that decision as an SRE and flip a feature flag rather than having to just having no control, right? It gives us these feature flags. We're hoping we'll be able to use them to do on the fly tuning if we need to as well. So sorry, I'm just excited about this whole load balancer thing. It's
No,
going to be
no,
great.
great. I think it definitely brings us a lot of benefits to GitLab, and that's definitely why we want to make sure we do it,
Yeah.
even though we have a lot of other things on our plate. Cool. Well, let's park it here for now. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Database Team 16.8 planning, and we'll share more updates as we make progress. Thank you.